Hi there, it's Elizabeth. So I guess today would be day 15 if you include the last day of kind of like the Pilgrim's Mass. I'm just here in front of the cathedral and I'm just taking a moment of my own. I've been around people all day and morning, so I think I'm just moseying around the city to get my moment of kind of some peace and solitude. You know, it's freezing here. I had to go back to my hotel and get my second jacket. But the Pilgrim Mass was definitely an interesting experience. I mean, it definitely has very historical significance in terms of not only the St. James Way, but of St. James himself, because his bones and body are buried in this cathedral, and so you do get a moment to go inside, kind of touch the statue, and then go downstairs and have a moment to have a word or a prayer in front of his tomb or coffin. The funny thing about the Pilgrim Mass today, so today is All Saints Day, it's the 1st of November, and it is a day that they do the Bonifera, which is basically the incense are into a giant, kind of like a metal mass, and then they swing it back and forth. And apparently you can pay to get that done through a donation. Somebody says like €400, but I can't quite tap into certain moments of, I don't know if it would be like spirituality or what you would say when there's a ton of people around, because I actually did, once the Mass happened and the incense kind of hit my nose, it took a while for the incense smell to kind of hit my nose, but it's like my senses got stimulated and heightened at that point. And then once the organ started playing, I just had like 15 minutes of chills just running through my body, and I knew I was tapping into something a little, I was tapping into my higher self, I was tapping into my soul. And I was sitting next to John from Australia, my friend Eddie from Australia, and John, you know, he's an older guy and had some of the sermon in English on his phone, and just reading some of it, you know, it was just talking about a lot of the really nice roots that are connected to Christianity, which is basically don't harm the land or harm the sea, just be kind to one another, have a pure heart, and and the purity that's in your heart is to be into your head. And so as I was reading this, it just like chills just started to overcome onto my body. But the funny thing is, you know, humans are humans, and technology has changed us so much that like, I wasn't gonna take a picture or a video of the Bonifera, but it's like everybody with their phones. It just was like hilarious, because everybody started getting into the aisle and they're like lifting up their phone. And I had to laugh because I had to take a picture and a video of it, because it was just so funny to see everybody doing it. And, you know, they asked like numerous times not to take video or a cell phone. And I was kind of wondering, I'm like, I wonder what life was like as a pilgrim like 500-600 years ago, when you actually came here in pursuit of God and not in terms of any form of like superficial layers of vanity. And maybe I'm a part of that as well. You know, I'm standing outside of this cathedral doing this video, kind of decompressing, you know, some of my emotions of the experience. But it definitely was, it's a beautiful church and cathedral inside. It's definitely one of the most interesting cathedrals I've been to. I mean, places like in the Vatican and the cathedral in Sevilla is quite amazing itself. But, you know, I don't know, these old churches are just so amazing. And when you look at these structures that were created in the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th century, and then you're kind of looking at a lot of like modern architecture today, it's like, this is why people gravitate toward places like Europe. It's because all of this was made by hand, and it was made by the creativity of one's mind. And creativity is a lot of that connection that happens between the head, the heart, and the hands. But, you know, after that Pilgrim Mass, I kind of feel like the spiritual journey is not over, but in terms of it being the pilgrimage, you know, it is over in terms of, you know, me being on the way of St. James. And it's just it's an amazing experience to be so close to someone's relics and remains who was an apostle of Christ. I mean, it's just a very special experience, and I really hope that if people do this in the future, that they are going for more spiritual and religious reasons rather than it just being for sport and trying to walk like 40-50 kilometers a day. But I don't know, you know, I still have these memories from India kind of flooding into my brain, and I'm kind of wondering, I'm like, well, if I'm 33 and I'm doing this, what am I going to do at 44? Obviously something fun. Maybe I'll be married and have a child by then, or maybe I'll be alone. Who knows the future? But it's just so funny. It's so funny, my little thing with the numbers. People think I'm crazy, but you know, today's the 1st of November. It's 11/1. And then tomorrow I take a flight to Germany, and I'm on Lufthansa flight 1111. And so, you know, I'm obviously on some form of path, and with life, you know, with manifestation, I do think we can manifest a lot of things, but sometimes some of the things we manifest are not always for our higher being and for our highest good. I've had that happen in my life, and I've had that happen to certain friends, things that they've manifested actually. For example, one of my friends wanted to date a photographer, and life sent her a photographer, but he was absolutely a horrible human being to her. So, you know, she got what she wanted, but it just wasn't the entire full package. So, you know, maybe the entire full package will come, but I'm in a good place. Like, I'm happy. I have no complaints. I just want to continue to remember these experiences, because I think somewhere along the road, when we get readjusted to life, we will forget certain things, and that's completely normal. It happens, but I just don't want to forget, you know, these lessons and the feelings and the moments and the connections with people. It's actually funny, I ran into a couple Germans yesterday, and I saw them today in the street, and they hiked the Primitivo way, which was the first way that was ever created, and they did the Portuguese way a couple years ago, and they bent over to me and they said, the Portuguese people are so much nicer than the Spanish people. Because I was asking them which way they liked better, and I think, you know, the Primitivo way, you have a lot more nature, but there's something about Portugal and the Portuguese people that is absolutely just stunning, phenomenal, and amazing. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm gonna do another video on kind of a video to myself, that certain things I just don't want to forget. But yeah, this was kind of the little version of how the mass went, and you know, I was in church for like 2.5 hours this morning. I got there at 10:30, kind of sat through the end of the mass. But I don't know, it's kind of funny because, oh, this is another thing, like Santiago is an amazing and it's a beautiful city. I really love this old town. It's honestly one of the best I've ever been to. But the funny thing is, I'm a little overwhelmed because when you walk in, there's just countless souvenir stores with the Way of St. James, you know, stuff, and it's like all these things are probably made in like China and Asia somewhere, really cheap. And, you know, it has no symbolic value in terms of it just being something that you consume and take home. And so that's a big reason why I wanted to buy certain things, like the shell necklace that was created by the brass, or the guy who owned the brass and copper shop in Barcelos. It's because I wanted authentic things that were little emblems and memories, and not just, you know, the same 9 stores within 2 blocks selling the same like shell necklace that was probably just created in like Southeast China. And I guess what I mean is, this is an amazing experience, but it is a tourist thing now, and it becomes very consumptive. Like, you can walk through these beautiful villages and just stop and have a coffee or a wine at every little cafe along the way. So, you know, it's like you're not gonna die. You know, people will help you. It's not the 11th century where you're literally doing this while drinking out of a little shell and walking in soaking wet cloaks that take like 4 days to dry, when they probably wouldn't dry because of this type of weather here that's like cold, damp, and muggy or cloudy. But that part has been a little overwhelming just because it's so consumeristic, and it just loses the touch to the true authentic forms of spirituality. But this is where we are at nowadays, you know. It's like everyone wants a video of the church, and I took pictures along the way and video along the way as well, but you know, even when I took a lot of pictures when I did my stuff in India, but it was a very sacred experience to not take any pictures within the yoga hall. That was like their one rule. And maybe some of these churches should go back to having some of that rule as well, because I don't know, it just I actually just felt bad for the locals. Like, a lot of locals showed up today to, you know, celebrate All Saints Day. This is a big thing for them, and unfortunately, they weren't able to enjoy it as much, I don't think, with a bunch of pilgrims and tourists, and some of the pilgrims held up their national flag, which is a great thing. I think it's great to be proud of where you come from, but I don't know if it's not a sport match, it's not a soccer game, it's a church. So, you know, these levels of respect are different from everyone's perspective and point of view, but it's just very, very fascinating, some of the stuff, yeah, to experience. So that's some of my thoughts for today. I'm sure I'll do another video later, and thank you so much for listening. Talk to you guys later. Bye.